think you're playing football? Do you think you're playing football? Do you think you're playing football? You are showing me nothing.
Fires, Mike Sims, Walker, knocked down.
Oh my God! Davis is going running all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
In trouble, he's going to be sacked. No, gets away. He runs, gets away again, goes to the 40, gets away again.
Jackson takes it himself. Look at him dart back and forth. Oh! He broke his ankles.
I have never seen this before in my life.
Still looking, firing, near corner. It's caught.
Denver, unbelievable.
And welcome to the Fourth Down Fiasco.
Hello and welcome to the Fourth Down Fiasco, your go-to podcast for all things football. I'm having a hard time staying awake, Jordan Pryor, and it's only me today. With us crashing headfirst into the offseason, there are no major headlines to discuss, but we are in the midst of our offseason segment, the FANBASE Fiasco, where we give power back to the fans, who are arguably the most important part of any franchise, and I will die on that hill. If you want to have that discussion, let's talk about it. Come see me. You know where to find me. And as always, we ask that you rate us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, share it with your friends, and follow us on social media. We are at @4thdown_pod on Twitter and at Fourth Down Fiasco on TikTok and Instagram. And if you're listening right now, I want you to go onto Twitter or X if you're into that kind of thing. Do it right now. Tweet at us who you think the worst fan base in the NFL is. We want to know. And I know you're probably listening to this on your phone, so unless you're driving, there's no excuse not to say hi. The rundown of today's podcast is going to go like this. We have 2 FANBASE Fiasco interviews, starting with Broncos fan correspondent Jordan Edel, and then we fly from one of the driest parts of the country to one of the wettest to talk to Richy Hawkins Jr. about the Miami Dolphins. And I do want to add in that with all 3 of us, Danny, Tanner, and myself, having full-time jobs, scheduling these interviews has been, for lack of a better term, a pain in the ass. And these 2 interviews were never intended to be on the same episode. But with cancellations and other things in life, we had the content and we still wanted to put it out there and give y'all 2 interviews. The discussions are still incredibly relatable. It's not like you're going to hear something that doesn't make sense. It's not like these were recorded 6 months ago. They're fresh. They're new. They just weren't intended to be on the same episode. And basically, you're going to find that it feels like 2 interviews intended to end an episode were put together. So if any of that makes sense to you and you're still here, then hell yeah. And if it doesn't make any sense to you, but you're still here, then hell yeah to you too. With that, it's 4th down and goal to go. I think today I'm just going to take the safe bet and kick the field goal. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Danny and Tanner for some Broncos talk.
Welcome back to FANBASE Fiasco. We are joined here today with Jordan Edel, representing the Denver Broncos. And I don't know what I'm supposed to say after that, am I?
Bro, you didn't make a script?
No.
Tell the truth, how you settle in. Your team is veterans, so how you cope with where you sit this season. Better spin, better rhetoric. Mattel as greatest teams have been. I ask the question of you now to see the thoughts you spin. FANBASE Fiasco, don't think that I'm irrational. My team better than your team, and that's just facts, bro. We've been examples. Don't think this year don't mean much. This legacy you talking about, let me tell you about my team, son.
Welcome back to FANBASE Fiasco. We are joined here today with Jordan Edel, our Denver Broncos correspondent.
So, what do you think about Sean Payton paying players to hurt other players?
Allegedly. It was his defensive coordinator. No. That was before my time. Anything pre-Broncos, it's in the past.
Anything current Broncos.
Good answer. I guess he wasn't on the Broncos at that point, but
should look into politics. That was good.
How did you become a Broncos fan?
So I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. So my dad had season tickets, so we went to games. I got to go to training camps, meet players, and we got to see the end of the John Elway and Terrell Davis era. I got to see the highlights of the Jake Plummer era. There were some highlights, yeah.
Some highlights.
They were good. There was a potential Super Bowl season in there, but just growing up into it is definitely part of the household. You're raised as a Broncos fan, and don't really have another option.
Well, at least you've seen more Super Bowls than I have in my lifetime. So, next question. What do you want to ask?
All right, let's go with, so based on last season, what would you grade the season from an A to an F?
So I think the expectation coming into this was improvement on last season. They won 5 games last season. So anything better than that is nice, especially with the train wreck that was kind of the end of last season. But so I think setting the bar was improvement. The hope was the playoffs. I think the playoffs would have been a B, depending on if you were contenders, not an A. But I would say around a C. And then there was definitely the start of it, if you're including that, was rough.
Yeah.
But I think they gained steam. They had a bunch of wins in a row. I think you can say C+ for how they ended the season. There's a lot of hope for what they can look like in the future, and there's a lot of promise for like the management, which we haven't had in a while. There's John Elway was the GM, and as much as I like John Elway, there's arguments that he was not a very good personnel guy. They've now done 13 quarterbacks in the post Peyton Manning era, looking like we're going to a number 14 here. So having George Payton come over from the Vikings, having a GM that really looks like he's good at scouting, he's good at player personnel, and then Sean Payton who can come in and someone that can really take over the whole organization. Because when you have little bits and pieces of like some people managing it, some people wanting to do different stuff, and nobody really in control, it really does seem like it's Sean Payton's team to run, and everybody else is around him doing their parts. So I think it's going to be more cohesive, and so next season we're looking hopefully some more improvement. I'd be disappointed if it wasn't playoffs next season. So C+ passing. Hopefully we'll see where it goes.
I thought you guys were going to make a run with it with your big win streak in the middle of the year, but it just, that whole weird controversy at the end of the season with Russell Wilson and all that. But to make the playoffs next year, what do you want to see your team do in the draft, in the free agency? What do they need to do to take that next step?
So the quarterback is definitely the biggest question, and then the second would be the cap space. There's going to be some big players that are going to have to be moved on from. We saw, like, looking at the changes that happened between the 1 and 5 section of the season to going on that big win streak is definitely defensive. So it sounds like Vance Joseph will be back. So having a coordinator there for 2 years in a row is going to be huge. We'll see. Justin Simmons was hurt during the start of the year, and as soon as he got back, there were a lot of other changes. But it's kind of like I don't know if you guys remember Bob Sanders for the Colts, just an insane player. Maybe Justin Simmons isn't a defensive player of the year, but he's one of those people that the whole defense goes around him. So he's a free agent. He's on the list where if we cut him, it's saving $16 million or $14 million, something like that. That's a lot of money, but so bring him back, and then we need to fill out some of the roster spots with young talent, not necessarily free agents. We will bring some in, but we had some interesting, like Frank Clark and Randy Gregory. We bought them in, and both of them are gone week 3 of the season. Just absolutely messy. So if we can get some young guys with potential to go in, so I think what would really look like success, so we're bringing a bunch of young guys to fill those spots, and then some sort of answer at quarterback. From everything I've seen, from the media, from Sean Payton, everybody, it doesn't look like the Russell Wilson situation is going to work. It doesn't seem like he fits in Sean Payton's system. I'm not a super big play-by-play quarterback or like offensive. I can tell what's going on, but from people, I think it was Phil Simms, talked about how he looked at the offense and there's really only about 9 plays that the Broncos ran.
Really?
And because that's all they could trust Russell Wilson with. He couldn't throw the middle of the field. He couldn't do those short passes. And so there's a lot of arguments that were very visible with Sean Payton yelling at Russell Wilson on the sideline and stuff. There's definitely some disagreements, and I think Russell Wilson probably can't run the offense Sean Payton wants to run. So we want to see a quarterback I don't know if it's going to be Jarrett Stidham. Sean Payton went out the first day of free agency last year and picked up Jarrett Stidham. He's a big fan of him. Last year he showed some promise for the Raiders. He did not for the Broncos in his couple starts. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but some answer at quarterback. I think Stidham will be the starter going forward, and then hopefully someone young to fill in there. I think Stidham, if he can make those plays and throw to the middle of the field, the Broncos will be good enough with a good defense behind them to make the playoffs.
Do you think you can see him in Denver for the foreseeable future?
Russell Wilson?
No, Stidham. Do you want Stidham to be there for a couple years, or do you want to draft a guy this year and develop him instead of Stidham?
I think he will be there 1 year in the Broncos. I don't think they bring him back. I think he's a stopgap quarterback. So whether it's a young guy, I think it'll be a day 2 pick, so not first or second round really for quarterback. I think it'd be more looking like a third round, depending just on the Broncos don't have a second round pick, so I'm just from the inclinations from what's going on and the rumors and stuff. George Payton is very famous for collecting draft picks, wanting to draft or trade picks back. I was looking at the trade analyzer, and it looks like the Broncos' 12th overall pick would be worth a high second, a low second, and maybe a third or a fourth for somebody to trade all the way up, especially those teams that are playoff teams that are maybe one good position away. So there's definitely a possibility going back and picking out another quarterback, but I don't think any of the quarterbacks outside of the top 10 are worthy of starting year 1. So it's definitely developmental. I don't know. Everybody wants a Jordan Love right now, I think.
Yeah, right.
As crazy it is to say this year.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, just with drafting a quarterback, talking about, okay, 12 is not a great spot for that. What do you want to see out of the draft picks this year? What positions do you want to see addressed? What are you thinking at 12 right now if the Broncos decide to stay?
So I think at 12, there's a lot of big needs for interior linemen, defensive and offensive. There's not some huge high draft picks that are projected to go early on, so we'd be looking at more second round picks. So of those people that would be picked that high and not a reach, it sounds like Brock Bowers would be a huge one. Everybody wants a big tight end. You've got Mark Andrews, you've got Sam Laporta, you've got Travis Kelce, you've got George Kittle. Having a tight end is an extra factor in offense. Broncos haven't had an answer. They drafted George Dulcich last year. He's been hurt the whole time, so maybe there's potential. But even it was crazy. The Broncos would run the same plays, and we've got Adam Troutman and Chris Manhertz who are blockers, and they don't have an X factor. Having a tight end that's able to run that would be huge. So Brock Bowers, if he falls that far, some of the defensive linemen are good. I think it sounds like Sean Payton likes collecting wide receivers. Sounds like he was looking. They did some interviews for Super Bowl week, and he mentioned specifically looking at wide receiver tight end for the receiving end, finding someone that can stretch the field. So if one of those big wide receivers drops, then that could be it. But other than that, from what I've gauged, it looks like they want to move back and collect more picks. They're over the salary cap. How you navigate that is get a lot of young guys on your team. And there's so many roster holes. They traded for Sean Payton, a first round pick and third round pick. They traded for Russell Wilson, first, second, and I can't remember the other picks, but they have not had very many high picks. They had Patrick Surtain, and that's the only one in the last few years that's been a high pick.
Was it 2 first round picks or 3 first round picks for Russ?
I think it was 3.
Was it 3?
Or maybe 2 first and a second. But I know we talked a little earlier. I'm not a huge fan of trading for coaches in general. I don't think you should go trade player assets for a coaching asset. There's plenty of coaches out there, especially, I know you guys try to get Harbaugh, but you brought something up that every team that has traded for a quarterback has gone on, or for a coach, has gone on to win a Super Bowl. Do you think the Sean Payton project will go on long enough for you guys to be a Super Bowl contender team?
I think the expectation is within 2 years a contender. I think next year they're hoping to either the Russell Wilson situation, it's 2 years on the cap, and I think it's hard to build a team when you have 30-something, 40 million next year. So this year's 37, next year's $49 million of your team away. So it's hard to believe that. Nobody wants to say rebuild, but that's definitely the sense is you need to have a foundation here. I think the main thing is we tried some new coaches. We tried Vance Joseph, had him for a couple years, and that was not great. We had Vic Fangio for 3 years, and he's a good defensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach. We had Nathaniel Hackett, and I think everybody's still finding out how bad of a decision that was. So they wanted someone that could come in and run everything for them, and I think it's hard to find someone that does that. Sean Payton has the resume, where if you just wanted the answer and you got someone that could do that, Sean Payton's the only one that they were willing to go and get that fit that criteria.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah, especially last year. This year, the coaching decisions or coaching availability is a lot more crazy. We'll see if Bill Belichick is even on the team, Mike Vrabel's even on the team.
Yeah,
it'll be crazy.
I did not expect the coaching hires to go this way this year. I didn't expect Belichick to be left out, especially with Vrabel. Vrabel is such a good defensive-minded coach, and for him to just be left out of every coaching opportunity right now is beyond me. I can see Belichick; he's getting up there. His coaching style and the way he runs his teams are a little outdated, but still, he's one of the best coaches of all time. For him to not even be an assistant head coach in a special position, it's weird.
No.
So we talked about draft. What about free agents? Who do you want to bring onto your team?
So George Payton, Sean Payton have been very vocal. They're not going to be day one, active day one. None of those big name free agents. Last year, there was only one team that signed more than one player for over $47 million. And that was the Broncos, and they signed 3 players. They got a right tackle, Mike McGlinchey, left guard, Ben Powers, and a defensive tackle in Allen. So what we're looking at and what they've talked about is they just need some veterans to fill those spots. There is a lot of young talent, especially like on the defensive side. There's a lot of young talent and a lot of the free agents that are set to go. So there's 14 unrestricted free agents, of which 4 are starters currently. And then you have a bunch of big names. There's $24 million in cap space that they need to make up. So Garrett Bowles is going to make the second most on the team outside of Russell Wilson at $20 million. They can extend him, move some of that cap space around. Sean Payton was pretty famous for the Saints. I've heard discussions on if the salary cap is real. Yeah, because you can move stuff around.
A lot of teams are getting very creative. I will say Cincinnati is not a very creative team. We are very by the book. You sign them, and that's about it. We don't do what the Rams do and kind of make up money and push it 10 years down the road. Do you know what your GM does with signing bonuses and stuff like that? Does he push it? Does he just go by the book?
It's hard to say because he's only been a GM for 21 years. Or
only 21 years.
Since the 21 season, sorry. Some of his biggest blunders were signing people early. The day he signed Russell Wilson, he extended the contract. Yeah. So he's pretty famous, and it's very opposite of what John Elway was. We're waiting until right before they were free agents, they're signing them. So paying them early and often is kind of his thing. Sean Payton is more famous for going out and getting big free agents, specifically offensive line. So the big question here is our center, who last year everybody was kind of wanting to move on. He hadn't shown any promise. This year he outplayed his contract, anything we can give him. So center is the big hole in the middle. It's a very important position. And then the other interesting situation is wide receiver. We've got Cortland Sutton, who's going to be making $16 million. Tim Patrick, who's going to be making double digits as well. Jerry Jeudy is going to be making $13 million. Jerry Jeudy is completely guaranteed, so you can't do much there. One of Cortland Sutton or Tim Patrick will probably be gone. Tim Patrick's been hurt for 2 years. It's a bummer. Yeah. He's been a leader on the team, but you just can't fit everybody in there.
So that's a lot of money on a wide receiver.
That is a lot.
Yeah. especially with the production. Broncos haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver in a little while.
Quite a bit.
So kind of piggybacking off that as well, you talked about the wide receiver need, or the wide receiver depth that you're about to lose with Tim Patrick, how you need another center on the roster. What do you feel like is the biggest weakness positionally on the Broncos right now? Whether that be your coach, your quarterback, offensive line, where do you think they need the biggest upgrade at?
So quarterback is the biggest need, although Russell Wilson played pretty well, so you could argue that it wasn't the biggest weakness. The biggest weakness last year was probably defensive line. We brought in the guy that Allen, who made 40-something million. We had Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, and they weren't up to it. They cut them week 4 or 5. They had a bunch of rookies in there, second-year players, and Miami ran for 350 yards, passed for 300. Just absolutely insane numbers up until then. There were a lot of changes after that with bringing the new guys in, getting rid of the veterans made some differences, but it's going to be that defensive line for stopping the run, and then also defensive backs. We had a lot of injuries last year, so it's hard to say how those new pieces are going to fit. But you can't have any success in this league, especially in division, with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert if you don't have a good secondary. So those are the two biggest needs. And George Paton's been famous for having too many cornerbacks when he was back on the Vikings. Big cornerback fan. So that's another thing, is I would expect a couple free agents to come in for cornerback. And kind of with the draft, I would expect them to fill out cornerback as well, especially the later rounds.
So kind of going the opposite of the spectrum there, looking at what you need the most, what would you be the most upset if they upgraded? Like, what do you think the Broncos are most solid at right now positionally?
I would be disappointed if they get an offensive line early outside of center. It seems like they can wait later. And they have Forsyth, who was an Oregon center for a couple of years. He was a rookie last year. He won practice squad player of the week a few times, as much as that means.
An award is an award, right?
But outside of that, it sounds like they expect him to be a starter. George Paton went out and said they view him as a starter. So I would be disappointed getting a big offensive line, and whether it's in draft or free agency, because there's already people there. Somebody would be sitting. That's a lot of money. There can be needs other places. And so that's the only place I would be really disappointed. But outside of that, there's so much room for improvement with this team.
There's very few places I would be upset about the Broncos picking. There are, like you just said, there are a lot of holes that you need filled. But so we talked a lot about the future. Let's look back on last season. What was your favorite moment that happened in this season so far, or this past season?
So I don't know if the rest of the NFL was aware, but the Broncos had not beat the Chiefs in 16 games, 8 years without beating the Chiefs. So having our prime rival, that was definitely the biggest moment of the season. That was probably the biggest moment of the last 5 years, beating the Chiefs. As bad as the Broncos have been, they've normally been competitive, and there's normally like a last-minute interception or a fumble or something, and it's a close game. So finally beating the Chiefs was definitely the biggest moment, and probably the most celebrated moment in the last 5 years for the Broncos franchise.
8 years is a long time not to beat a single team, especially when you play them 2 times a year.
I mean, that's probably what the Browns were looking at for a little bit there against some of the division rivals, right?
Probably against Big Ben or even Joe Flacco. They probably had a lot of very close streaks to that. But so let's flip the page, go worst moment of last season.
That's pretty easy. The Dolphins game. One of the worst performances in NFL history.
That was pretty
Thankfully,
bad.
Mike McDaniel kneeled the ball at the end there. Could have kicked a field goal or something and gotten the record for the most points. That was probably the lowest point that I remember as a fan, especially with like hoping for the improvements this season, to have everything turn into that. I'm credit to Sean Payton for not firing and getting rid of so many people, and somehow they turned it around for being that low. That was a rough time to be a fan.
It was really impressive watching the team get 70 piece and then still have 8 wins. Like, they were still competitive and they looked good against some teams, but
that's kind of when they went on their run after that game. Like, they just got so demoralized and just utterly destroyed, and they're like, we had nothing else to lose. Let's just go on an 8-game win streak.
Let's just try our best,
and when you watch the game, it was crazy because it's not one weakness. It's everybody was making mistakes.
Yeah.
All the veterans, you got cornerbacks missing, safeties, linebackers in the wrong holes, defensive linemen just being pushed completely aside.
Yeah.
That's about as close as you can get to total team collapse. And
It was all three aspects of football: special teams, offense, defense, just everything.
yeah.
But I will say I wish they would have pulled a Jameis Winston and would have kicked that field goal. I would have liked to seen a record broken, but it is what it is.
No, I'm glad they didn't. I don't know.
You don't want against your team.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know Mike McDaniel was a Denver guy growing up.
Yes.
So I think there's a little bit of nostalgia in there where he's like not against my hometown team.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
It's good for him.
Yeah, if it were against my hometown team, you better believe we're kicking the field goal.
We do have Jordan here. He's just behind the camera.
Yeah.
So he was like, at least.
Hello, friends.
Yeah. He just made a comment. He's like, if it was my hometown team, I'm kicking the field goal.
Oh yeah, if I'm a coach and I'm playing against the Steelers, I'm trying to go 90 piece on them.
I'm setting records against my hometown team. But what else do we have?
So we got success in the upcoming season. We already kind of talked about this a little bit. You're kind of expecting a playoff berth, kind of being in that conversation. Is there anything else that you could see that you would want success out of the Broncos next season, or is it mostly just being in the conversation for playoffs?
Do you think you can challenge the AFC West title from Kansas City? You got close this year, then you kind of collapsed. But what about next year?
I don't think people realize how close the Raiders or the Broncos were to beating them. If the Raiders or the Broncos won a couple more games, especially down the stretch against some very beatable teams like the Patriots and stuff, they would have replaced the Chiefs as first in the division and would have been in the playoffs. This was definitely the most vulnerable that the Chiefs have been. So it's a pain not to see them capitalize. But yeah, I think the potential of the Raiders, or we'll see how the Chargers do. They scare me now that they have an actual coach.
Yeah.
They have a lot of talent on the roster. They've always underperformed what we expected the roster to do.
Yeah.
So it'll definitely be a challenge. But I think it's definitely a possibility. I would probably predict that the Chiefs are not first in the West next year based on how things have been going. But I think the other big thing we're looking for this season is the Raiders now also have a streak where it's been years since the Broncos have beat them. The biggest success is playoffs and then winning in the division. Yeah. If they could have a winning record, again, not against the Chargers because somehow they're very beatable. But the Raiders and the Chiefs, we need to be at least 500 or above. Playing those 4 games.
Yeah, I feel you in division games. Cincinnati this year went 0-6 in our division. We built a team to compete with the top teams in the NFL, but just not within our division.
And it's also brutal that your division rival, in the most vulnerable year they look, have a Super Bowl berth.
Yeah. Somehow,
not ideal.
Their down year is a Super Bowl berth, which is unfathomable for most teams.
Okay.
But so we have a couple questions left, and they're mostly opinion. Well, these are all opinion based, but now these are your specific opinions, as not all the other questions were, I guess. I don't know. But who was your favorite player to watch throughout your lifetime?
In my lifetime, this is a very much love-hate relationship, but I would say there's something magic about Tim Tebow that will not be replicated. There's something about watching absolutely the worst football for 3 quarters and just knowing that there's going to be a win at the end.
I can leave now.
Anybody outside of that magic won't understand. But outside of that, Peyton Manning coming in, he was probably one of my favorite players. My brother's a Colts fan, so seeing him growing up, I was a big Peyton fan, and seeing him somehow the Broncos got him. And scoring 50-something touchdowns in 2013. They were good in 2012. And
a Super Bowl.
And, Super Bowl, going to 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He's my favorite player, but I do have to give a shout-out to Tim Tebow.
How great was it during that playoff game? Tim Tebow, overtime, one play, 75 yards, right down the field, touchdown against Tanner's Pittsburgh Steelers. How good was that feeling?
I think it was a divine moment from God right there.
Sorry, Tanner.
I think Peyton Manning's a better answer. I think watching Peyton Manning's a lot cooler than watching Tim Tebow. God damn it.
You can ask salt there.
You can ask any question you want next. Go ahead. It's a free reign for you now.
I'm just saying, Tim Tebow? All right, whatever. So, let's look past that when there wasn't scarred memories for me. players before you were born, players that you didn't really get to watch, who is somebody that you wish you could have watched live?
So Terrell Davis got injured right when I started remembering football. I have a pretty clear memory of the Raiders losing the Super Bowl in 2002, just because they're a rival, but I don't remember much football until the Jake Plummer years. I grew up hearing about Terrell Davis, and he had such a short career. He's the one player I wish I would have seen growing up, for sure. Yeah.
And I kind of want to piggyback on just talking about the Jake Plummer years. What was the worst quarterback that you think you've seen with the Broncos? Because you got a couple of contenders. I mean, you got Paxton Lynch, you got Mark Rippon. That was his name, right? Mark Rippon?
Brett Rippon.
Mark Rippon was the Commanders guy.
Yeah.
Or Redskins guy, I guess, back then. And then you also had,
you had Brock Osweiler.
You had Brock Osweiler. You had Kyle Orton. Mm-hmm. Who would you say has been the hardest?
Tim Tebow as well, yeah.
Well, Tim Tebow won a playoff game.
For a quarterback standard, Tim Tebow was absolutely the worst quarterback. Yeah. The games he won, he was not winning as a quarterback. He was a running back and maybe threw a couple. I don't know. He had some insane accuracy.
You could say he's a little Lamar Jackson-esque, right?
Yeah.
Not very quarterback?
Not very quarterback.
No. I think Kyle Orton's a good shout.
Kyle Orton.
Trevor Siemian had some magic.
Oh, yeah.
Brock Osweiler did his job. We don't win the Super Bowl without Brock Osweiler. Mm-hmm. Paxton Lynch didn't see the field enough to really say he's a bad quarterback. To say he hurt the team as much as some of the other quarterbacks have.
Yeah.
But I would say, Kyle Orton, especially when he came after Jay Cutler, we had all this promise. He was the Mike McDaniel, or not Mike McDaniel, Josh McDaniels era.
Oh.
So that whole era was just full of mistakes. Yeah. And Kyle Orton's in that. So
Kyle Orton's also hard to look at. So
that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, you want to wrap us up with the final?
Yeah, very last question is what is the general consensus within the Broncos fan base about their feeling about Russell Wilson?
Yeah, so I think it was pretty visible through the season. There were definitely some disagreements, if putting it lightly, between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. They seemed pretty one-sided, and Sean Payton was yelling at Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson did not seem happy with the situation, just being who he wasn't fighting back. But it was not once. It was not twice. It was quite a few times. Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned earlier, the playbook was limited with what Russell Wilson can do. And the offense that they ran, Sean Payton has typically and historically liked short. He had Drew Brees 2-3 second plays. Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson bailing out and taking 7 seconds, even though some of them worked. It's pretty clear it's not Russell Wilson, or Russell Wilson is not Sean Payton's type of quarterback. Yeah. So with Sean Payton staying here for the foreseeable future, I can't see Russell Wilson returning. I put some percentages on what I guessed. I think it's about 55% chance that they cut him. I think it's about a 30% chance that or a 25% chance that they would trade him if someone. I think
who's going to eat that salary cap?
So looking into it, you can kind of adjust who eats the cap, but versus cutting him. So as a Steelers fan, if we pay for Russell Wilson for a couple years, would you get Russell Wilson for free and use him? Do you think he'd be an upgrade, or would you rather?
No, I think Mason Rudolph can do it. Like, I don't know if that's like extremely insulting, but I think Mason Rudolph can probably perform to the same level as Russell Wilson.
A Super Bowl winner compared to Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean, just the cap situation you get in alone, like.
But if he eats the cap, like, you're basically getting for Mason Rudolph money, you get Russell Wilson. Would you do it?
Yeah, probably.
Try it out.
I might as well. Like, nothing's working at the quarterback position right now, so like, screw it. But it's one of those things where it's like, if they took some of the cap and they were eating the cap, I would despise it. I would think it would be a terrible move.
Yeah. It's rough to trade him. I think he's kind of been exposed in what he can do. You're paying for definitely his past body of work. Is he better than Desmond Ridder? I think that's a pretty big upgrade. So if the Broncos would have to eat the majority of almost all the cap. I don't think anyone would pay a significant amount for Russell Wilson.
You guys kind of.
It could be interesting in Atlanta, though. I mean, at least he can scrabble. You know, it's better than
He
Desmond
won't
Ritter does.
fumble as much as Ritter.
Yeah,
he won't throw as many picks. He won't fumble. He'll reduce the
He
turnovers.
plays safer at football.
And in the NFC South, like the Falcons were there at the end of the year. If they didn't have 7 turnovers a game, they probably won that division over Tampa Bay.
Yeah. So if you're not trading him, if you're not releasing him, you can restructure. I don't know why anyone would want to restructure. He earned that $37 million of extra money. Why would he say no?
Yeah.
So I think he's probably released. And March 17th is the date.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton in an interview talked about how that's one of the main subjects. He expects it to happen sooner than that.
Yeah.
So probably by the time people see this interview, they'll have a good idea of what's going to happen with the Broncos quarterback situation.
We are recording this a little early, so his guess about free agency, the draft, releasing is just a guess. So we'll see if he's right or not. But
you better be right because you're going to look like a genius.
Yeah, you have to be like Tanner. Predict 7 games in a row, about to be 8. So that dates this interview.
Knock it off.
My bad. I spilled it. Broke the fourth wall. But no, that is all the questions we have today. I want to thank you for coming on and joining us, being the Denver Broncos correspondent. Do you have any final words to say at the end of this interview?
I'm looking forward to the Elf season. I'm looking forward to some more football.
All right. Do you have an Elf team yet?
I do. I will be cheering for Coach Schmuck.
Coach Schmuck. Okay.
Yeah. He is the. Is it Belgium Thunder?
Berlin Thunder.
Berlin Thunder. Yes.
Oh, so we do have
Coach
a Thunder
Schmuck
fan.
of the Berlin Thunder. That's
so the Berlin Wall lives on.
Yes, you got to know because Danny and I are not going to know.
I heard the name, don't know what team, but now I do. All right.
The only thing is, I have to be able to watch it somehow. So if it's on TV, I'll watch it. I'm a big soccer fan. It's impossible to watch some soccer teams.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that would stop me. I'm hoping there's some sort of television rights in there.
We'll try to do watch parties.
Yeah, we'll do. There is ways. I'm assuming illegal streams as well, but no one has to know about that one. You didn't hear that. But yeah, I think that is all we have for today. So thank you again.
Woo! Good job, everyone.
You're the proud owner of a business, and you've got it all. The hustle, the bustle, and the occasional office kitchen mishap that turns into an alarm-triggering emergency. Whoa! But fear not. Western States Fire Protection is here to turn your workplace into a disaster-free zone. Our in-house team handles everything from fire sprinklers to alarms, monitoring, inspections, extinguishers, and more. Visit WSFP.com to request a quote. Because when your microwave thinks it's a flamethrower, we're the heroes you need.
This podcast is sponsored by Hair Club.
Fellas, are you losing your hair? Hairline receding, maybe? In the past, we as men had limited options. We could either rock the grandpa hairline, shave it, or resort to a very obvious-looking toupee. Well, the good news is there's an option for you now. Hair Club is a hair restoration and hair replacement service with offices spanning across the United States. Hair Club is different from other hair restoration places because they use cutting-edge technology like TricoView hair and scalp analysis, utilizing micromagnification to examine hair and scalp health. This provides better diagnostics of your hair and determines solutions to stop your personal hair loss. Solutions range from EXT extreme hair therapy to keep and regrow your existing hair by reactivating follicles and adding volume, X-Strands hair systems that is color and texture matched to perfection to blend with the rest of your hair, or even hair transplant solutions for those who are further along in their hair loss. I personally use the X-Strands system and have never turned back. My wife thinks I'm as sexy as ever and my confidence is at an all-time high, but I'm just a podcaster, right? Well, Hair Club has become such a renowned name that even dudes like two-time NASCAR champion Joey Logano and primetime Emmy nominee Frankie Muniz both utilize Hair Club services. And if you ultimately decide on a service, be sure to use the code FOURTH, that's FOURTH, for 10% off everything you purchase. There's no better time to get your hair back than now. So fellas, boost your confidence, get that look you want, go to hairclub.com today.
Are you looking for a podcast to advertise your business? Well, you're in luck. Here at the Fourth Down Fiasco, we're looking for show sponsors. Whether you want to be a platinum sponsor and be mentioned at the beginning and end of every episode, or you just want a simple 30 or 60-second ad, we got you covered. If you're interested in having a spot on our show, you can reach us at fourthdownfiasco@gmail.com. That's fourthdownfiasco@gmail.com. We are excited to hear from you and even more excited to have you on the show. Join the Fiasco family now.
All right, welcome back. You are still listening to our off-season segment, the FANBASE Fiasco. We are here giving power back to the fans because we all know fans are the most important part of every franchise anyways. And with me is a man whose Instagram bio says he is young and full of dreams, which is hard to come by in this desolate world we live in. Folks, we're excited to bring on the Dan Marino Dolphin dude, Richy Hawkins Jr. And honestly, Richy, if I'm being honest, you sound like you should own the team instead of just being the fan of the team. Say hello to the people for me.
Hello, guys.
All right. So, again, as everybody knows on this, we always ask the hard-hitting questions, and we need to know. Here's the thing. I heard that there was a missing persons report put out for Tua. Did they ever find him? I'm genuinely concerned.
Not in the playoffs, no.
Yeah, so he's still missing. Dang.
Still missing.
Unfortunate. Hopefully he returns in time for fantasy this upcoming season because, I need those points.
We'll see. We'll see.
Well, so Richy, how about you tell us a little bit about how you became a fan of the Miami Dolphins, especially because I know you as a Dallas Mavericks fan. And so I am curious as to how that became a thing.
Yeah, sure. No problem. So pretty much my dad, when I was 9 years old, so that was like 23 years ago, my dad took me to my first Dolphins game back when I was living with him. So that's as soon as I went to that game, I soon became a fan and been a fan ever since.
Nice. See, I love it whenever it's like, oh, my parent passed it down to me, because that's how it is for me. I'm sure you probably heard Jess's interview. I mean, her mom passed it down to her. So I love that kind of connection.
It's always that trickle effect with your parents. It's like, if you're a fan of a certain team and you really like that same team, your parents bring you in, boom, there you go.
Yeah. For me, I kind of regret that my parents are Cowboys fans. So I'm like, damn, I'm stuck. I can't go anywhere. So then you said you were 9 years old whenever he took you to your first game. So I guess who was your favorite player to watch, especially like in your childhood years?
I did get the chance to see Dan Marino play, but I was really late past his prime, so I was lucky to see that for the first time. So I would say Dan Marino.
Cool. I bet that was a spectacle, man. That dude can sling. So kind of transitioning now into the actual season that the Miami Dolphins had, how would you grade this past season, A through F, like you were a teacher?
So I would grade my team a C due to the fact that yes, we had the number one offense, but the reason why I say C is because we still could not get over that hump with getting a first playoff win, and also because it's been, I would say, over 24 years since we won our last playoff game, and you saw what Detroit did. Detroit pretty much broke their record from not even making the playoffs or winning the NFC North to actually doing both and winning the playoff game multiple times in one season. So now we're in the driver's seat of trying to get our first playoff win. So I would say a C due to the fact of not getting a playoff win and also not winning the big games during the regular season as well, because the only big game we actually won was against y'all, the Cowboys.
I remember.
During the Christmas Eve game, but then every other game against the Chiefs twice, we lost. Baltimore, we lost. Buffalo, we lost twice. The last game of the season was for the AFC East division. We lost that game. So I would say a C. I would grade my team a C. Oh, yeah.
No, I think that's a very fair way to do it. I kind of feel that same with my team of it gets frustrating knowing that, hey, you're going to have the regular season success that you're going to have. I remember especially about halfway through the season, I mean, it looked like y'all were true title contenders at one point during the season. And, but so you did mention something that I do want to dive in a little deeper. What do you think is the reason for Miami's woes with teams that are over 500? Because I do think that is a really weird stat that besides us, y'all couldn't really beat anyone that was over 500. And it's one of those things where the talent's there. There's no reason why at least one other time you shouldn't, just law of averages win a game. So what do you think that is?
So from what I read on Twitter, Dolphins Twitter, saying that they're blaming injuries, which I completely disagree with, because we had a bunch of injuries and yet we still finished top 5 in offense. So I think the main reason why we couldn't get over the hump over playoff teams in the playoffs is because mainly on offense due to the fact of Mike McDaniel and Tua up to the top, and then the offense as a whole. Because the reason why I say Mike McDaniel is because his play calling has been very awful. He's afraid to continue with the run, because when we do have the run game going, he abandons it at the wrong times, and then he forced Tua to throw the ball 35, 40 times when he necessarily don't even have to. And then the reason why I say Tua as well is because he do make some stupid decisions with the football as far as throwing costly interceptions, fumbling the ball, and forcing it just to Tyreek sometimes too, which I think you need to throw the ball to other players too. He does, but it just seems like he was more really trying to force the ball to Tyreek to get to his 2K receiving yards. So I think mainly the reason why is mainly on offense, because I think our defense kept us in pretty much every game that we lost against the playoff team. I would say pretty much except the Ravens. But every other playoff team we played against, it was mainly because our offense couldn't produce. Because the last game of the season against Buffalo, we only scored 14 points. Of course, against Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, you have to score more than 14 and 7 points, regardless if it was in a playoff setting or in a big game, regular season setting. Because if you only score 14 and 7 points, you're really not going to win a lot of games unless you really have an elite defense.
No, yeah, I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And something that I found really interesting was as I was looking at Miami's seasonal stats, because I hear what you're saying about the run game, and I thought that Miami, statistically speaking, was going to be bad at running the ball because I didn't remember them doing that a ton against us. And I went and saw that, yards per game, y'all were among one of the top leagues in the NFL. But yeah, to your point, it does seem like it while it's going good, it just stops. It just ceases to exist.
Yeah.
And it is a very odd thing. And, Tua, I think, is one of those. There are very few quarterbacks in this league that can single-handedly win you a game. There is Pat Mahomes, and there's Pat Mahomes, if we're being honest about it, and
pretty much
beyond Pat, everyone else benefits from a running game. Lamar Jackson had such a great season, but also Lamar Jackson, besides himself, also had a great rushing attack with his, with other running backs. Josh Allen's one of the few, but you even saw in the playoffs where everything got pushed onto Josh Allen's shoulders, and then they didn't end up winning that game. And so I think that the run game just goes so unnoticed. And yeah, that was very perplexing to see that y'all ranked so high as far as yards,
and still can't win nothing.
Well, and it seems like y'all don't have a very memorable run game, if that makes sense. I was looking and I was amazed at, I think y'all are third in the league in yards per game rushing. I couldn't tell you anything about your rush game. It's just very odd to me. So, no, I'm glad that you touched on that a little bit. So I guess for the season, what was the worst moment? Was it the playoff loss, or was it or was it something else?
It was not winning against one of these big playoff teams. Because I'm not saying Dallas, the win against Dallas was this big game that we won that was like, oh yeah, we're a contender. No, in order to be a contender in this league, you have to beat Patrick Mahomes, and we're 0 for 2 this past season. In the regular season, and in the playoffs. Whether it's calls didn't go our way or not, we still didn't win.
Yeah.
Done and done.
No, plain and simple. I like it. See, that's a no excuses type of thing. See, they should have had you in there, a head coach. Who knows? Things might be a little bit different.
I don't know about that. Because listen, most offensive will not like me as the head coach. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
They'd be like, Richy actually makes us like hold ourselves accountable. Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
All right. That's great. So kind of moving into off-season moves, I know that a big name that y'all are looking at right now that's on the team currently that you probably don't want to leave is going to be Christian Wilkins. So do y'all franchise tag him? Do you extend him? What's the deal going on over there?
So I've heard different reports that Anthony Weaver, which is our new defensive coordinator, wants him to stay. But, of course, NFL is a business, so you have to make a business decision first. So my thing is, if they want to re-sign him, I think they're going to tag him first, whether it's the franchise tag or the non-exclusive tag. I think they'll do that and possibly trade him after tagging him. So they could possibly get some back in return. For him, or they could just re-sign him for the number that both of them can like meet together. So I do want Wilkins to stay because he's been a very vocal point of our defense. He did play his ass off this whole season when under 1 year contract. So yeah, hopefully we keep him. If not, if they can get back something from return, hopefully they can tag him and trade him afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of on a similar note, I know that Jalen Phillips got injured, and I believe he has 1 more year left on that contract. Is it worth extending him early for a cheaper amount and taking that chance on him? Or do you think that y'all should let him see how he does as far as recovering this year, knowing that there's a possibility that if he does recover really well, you're going to have to pay a really hefty price?
Right. That's a difficult question. So in my eyes, I think we should wait due to the fact that he did suffer a really bad injury against the Jets, the Achilles tendon. So I think we should wait until after once he finishes rehab with this injury to see how he plays this upcoming season and see where his recovery ends up. Because I don't want to, even though he's a great player, don't get me wrong, I just don't want us to pay him and then he's not the same player that he was before he ended up getting hurt, because he was playing lights out before he got hurt. So,
no, a complete animal before he got hurt. And luckily nowadays, the procedures that they go through and the recovery process that they go through is so much better. Even with Achilles, I know that ACLs for probably about the past 15 to 20 years has gotten significantly better. But even in the past 10, Achilles has become a much more common thing for guys in all sports to bounce back from. So hopefully he does. And hopefully it's quick enough for y'all to still maybe get him cheaper than if he plays a full season and balls out. So,
yeah.
But besides him, I mean, is there anyone else in free agency that y'all are looking at? I know that y'all currently have 3 offensive linemen that you need to re-sign, but aside from them, can you speak to them or any other free agents that maybe the fan base wants?
So everybody keeps saying we need a healthy offensive line, which I do agree, but also that goes back to my previous answer before. It's like, yes, we do need a healthy offensive line, but the quarterback and the coach need to play a whole lot better us to move into that right direction. So I heard about Armstead possibly returning because he was contemplating on retirement. So I'm kind of conflicted on that particular decision due to the fact that Armstead hasn't been healthy since we signed him to that big contract because he always missed at least, I would say, 6 to 7 games a season because he can never stay healthy. So I think we should try to re-sign Connor Williams, what we got from y'all, at center, because he's been very good at center. Even though that center was not his actual position, it was actually guard. So, and he's been a very surprising, outside of the bad snaps, I must say, he did have some really bad snaps in the regular season, especially the one against the Chiefs that really cost us to come back in Germany, that game overseas. But he's been good overall, so hopefully we can get a chance to re-sign him. If not, he'll probably end up leaving. So we have to reshuffle our offensive line yet again. So we'll see.
No, I think Connor Williams did excellent for y'all overall, given the circumstances. And I mean, as someone who has watched Connor Williams block several times before, I would say he honestly looked better and more comfortable at center, other than, to your point, yeah, there being some snap miscues. But as far as the actual blocking assignment, he seems right at home at center. So it's good to see him expanding into that role. I hope that y'all get to keep him, because if not, I'm totally cool with him coming back to Dallas because we need some depth. But so a couple more free agency questions. I know I keep bombarding you with these, but I mean, there's just so many different things that I think that y'all have to figure out this offseason. You know, just a lot of people who need to be re-signed and a lot of people who also next year need to be re-signed. And I'm looking at Tua, and I know that once it comes time for him to re-sign, he's going to command big money. And that's not the difficult thing is any, you know, fringe top 10 quarterback is going to command great money. So do you think Tua has anything to prove before that contract signing? Do you think that he should get top tier quarterback money? You just kind of take me through your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I already know because I've said it on Twitter. Well, I haven't said anything Dolphins related in Twitter in weeks. So most people not going to like what I'm going to say, but I don't care. I don't think he deserves that type of money due to the fact that he hasn't shown me that he can play against high-quality competition in the regular season and the playoffs. The stats of top 5 offense, I get that. It's just he hasn't shown me anything in regards to the top teams. Because everybody keeps saying about, he can't play in the cold weather and stuff like that. I mean, he can, but against the Chiefs in the playoffs, 7 points is not going to get it done until he can show me that he can beat the playoff teams and I whoop on these really rebuilding teams. Then we can talk numbers. But as of right now, I don't think he deserves that type of money. No, let him play out that final year, see what he's working with. It's upcoming season. If the same shit happens like last year, let him go. I know I'm in the minority of this. I don't care, and plus I've been giving Tua some slack the last couple of years due to the situation that he's just going through. But the first couple of years, I was like, no, he's completely overhyped and some of that from Bama, because I did say he was overhyped due to the fact that because he came from Bama when he had that high-powered offense with Devontae Smith, Waddle, Cooper. Mm-hmm. All those elite receivers, running backs, and offensive line. And then as soon as he got hurt from Bama, in my eyes at the time, I say don't draft him because that particular reason. But the last few years, I gave him the benefit of the doubt because you finally have a head coach that finally giving him a chance to thrive. But me personally, I don't think he deserves that type of money right now. I'd say let him play out the final year. And if he performs in the big occasions and hopefully we make the playoffs again and win a playoff game, then we can work with something. But as of right now, no. In my eyes, he does not deserve that money. Whether he thinks he does, in my opinion, I don't think he does. Not right now.
And that's the thing that's so difficult is I think that quarterbacks overall have such a strangle on the market as far as, people getting their money and stuff. Because I mean, there is a chunk of quarterbacks. They're all around that same, Tua, your Dak, Kirk Cousins, I could list probably a good 6 to 7 quarterbacks that are all kind of in that area that you can make arguments for who's better, who's not. Some have this, some have that, whatever. But it's those guys who end up commanding the most money because, opportunity strikes. I mean, I don't blame them. I'm all about, hey, if you're a brother, go get paid. But it's frustrating because, again, like we were talking about with running backs, that is a very underappreciated position nowadays, a very underpaid position nowadays. And I think that a lot of those quarterbacks would benefit from maybe taking a little less money, going the Tom Brady route and taking less money. So then that way you can put more money towards the rest of the team and build an actual winning franchise versus, again, there's only one Patrick Mahomes, and he is the only guy who can single-handedly get it done time and time again. And that's just probably how it's going to be until someone replaces Pat. And I'm with you. I hear what you're saying. I don't know enough about the money that he's asking for, and I didn't pay close enough attention to their season this past year because I'm more of an NFC guy. But I definitely hear what you're saying, and I can kind of relate that to other quarterbacks that I know of in the league. So shifting gears a little bit and moving on from the free agency talks, I do know that y'all recently picked up a new defensive coordinator in Anthony Weaver. What is the outlook on him? What does he bring to the table that you think Fangio didn't?
So I think he's a people's person due to the fact that he does coach from the sidelines and not from the booth. That's what Fangio did. He was coaching from the booth instead of communicating with the players on the sidelines. I think that's the difference between Weaver and Fangio. Fangio never got the chance to communicate with, for example, Jalen Ramsey, because there was a big commotion going on about him not placing Ramsey on the top tier receivers. Just like the game against Dallas, CeeDee Lamb was really killing us. But he had one of our backup corners on CD, and he was eating them alive. Mm-hmm. But when Ramsey got on CD for a couple of series, CD couldn't really do much. So it's just not communicating with the players is the difference between Weaver and Fangio. And of course, Weaver is going to be mostly on the sidelines, communicating with his defensive players to get their input on where players need to be on each down.
Gotcha. And so what is the overall consensus of the fan base as far as Fangio leaving? Is the fan base, happy about it, sad about it? Have you heard mixed reviews? What's going on?
They're happy that Fangio, because I haven't really been tweeting about Dolphins of late because I just don't want to get all to that.
It's basketball season. I understand. It's not just segment. It's
not just that, Jay. It's just that fans on Twitter Dolphins fans on Twitter just going after each other this type of year too. I just don't want to deal with that right now because I'm very passionate fan, as you can see on Twitter. You've been following me for years. It's just I just don't want to deal with that because I've been a lot of battle scars. Sometimes I have my expectations up on this team, and then once the season starts, the same stuff happens. It's you get a lot of wins, and then nothing to show for it. It's no, I just prefer not to even talk about it on Twitter or anything like that. Just let them have it.
Yeah,
just let them have it.
Something you mentioned, battle scar. Something that Jazz and I mentioned in our interview was how in the Green Bay game for us, it was within the first 5 minutes I knew we were going to lose that game, and so I mean, I don't know enough about your team, but it did feel like y'all came out flat during that playoff game. Is it kind of the same thing where you felt in the first few minutes of this doesn't feel right? This doesn't feel like it's going to go our way.
The thing is, Jay, is that we was in the game. Our defense kept us relatively in the game, just like I was referring to a while ago. It's you against Mahomes, whether it's home or on the road, you still can't score 7 points and expect to beat him in a playoff setting. But Fangio really, our defense was pretty good, holding Mahomes to only, I would say, 20 points of offense. That's relatively decent compared to what other teams have done. It's just our offense didn't step up at all. It's you can't score 7 points and expect to win in the playoff series. Plain and simple.
Oh yeah, no, 1,000%. And honestly, I think y'all's defense probably could have even held them to a lower score if it wasn't for them constantly being on the field. You know,
that's another reason, because a lot of fans on Twitter saying that, our defense have a lot of injuries, and that's the reason why we had this collapse. I'm like, no, that's not true.
No, they're tired.
they're tired of being on the field because our offense keep going 3 and out. It's either a 3 and out or a turnover, or it's like it's either or. It's like we can't even get a sustainable drive going. It's like if it's not a 3 and out, it's either a fumble by a running back or receiver or an interception by Tua. So no. No.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'll quit torturing you with questions about the playoff stuff. I have just 2 more questions, and they're more fan related. Again, just one of the things that we're really trying to build here on Fourth Down Fiasco is a community of fans who just love ball. We love talking about our teams and everything. And so I guess overall outlook, what does success look like this upcoming season? That'll be one. And then I got a spicy little something for you afterwards.
Okay. So in my opinion, I think in order for us to have any kind of success going on to 2024, 2025, I think McDaniel needs to grow up and stop being scared. When the run game is going, stick with it until teams stop it. No, I'm not saying run every single down. No, but
if they can't stop it,
true. If they can't stop it, keep calling it. But I think McDaniels need to grow up, and because everybody keeps using excuses for McDaniel, which I find that bullshit in my eyes, due to the fact that he's been in the league for 20 plus years. So I don't care for that. Oh, he's still learning all that other BS crap. No, he needs to grow up, call better plays, make better adjustments, and just stick to the run when it's there. It's like don't abandon it when you force Tua to throw, like I said, 35, 40 times and expect to win, because that's what defense going to expect every single game. It's like when the run game is going, and then when McDaniel stop calling run game, then defenses know that they're going to start throwing the ball like 20, 25 times. And then there you go. It's like defense knows what's coming. Just like the Kansas City game. Kansas City is not known to be one of the best run-stopping teams. We was running on them. But, of course, in under 0-degree weather, he had to throw the ball over 25, 30 times.
Yeah, and it's like that's the weather that you do run the ball in.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's what happened over there whenever Baltimore played Kansas City. You know, they had like 3 runs in a row to start off the game, and then they just completely abandoned it. And they ran, I think Danny ran the stat, was like 8 or 9 times total for the entire game. And it's like, no, the thing that they're good at is stopping the pass. You should be running up the gut and stuff, because they can't stop it.
Right.
So last question for you. Normally we leave people by asking them who in your team's past would you have liked to have seen play, but I actually saw something really interesting the other day that I wanted to ask you about instead. Okay. So I didn't realize how crazy y'all's home field advantage is, at least during the warmer months, and that it's a 35-degree difference between the sidelines, and because of how the sun points, right?
The shade and then the non-shade, yeah.
Dude, that is crazy. Whoever built that stadium and thought of that was a genius. No, yeah, I was just reading about how I forgot which team y'all were playing, but they were talking about how their side of the sidelines registered at 127 degrees.
Buffalo.
Whoo, dude, that is diabolical.
Yep. As soon as you said that, I already know what team it was. Yep.
Dude, that's crazy. And then, yeah, y'all are chilling, and it's like, I'm 90 on your side. I mean, yeah, it's a humid 90. I mean, Florida 90 don't play. I've been to Florida many a times, but it's not 127.
No.
Well, cool. Richy, is there anything you want to plug as far as, your social media or anything else before we head out?
Sure. So my Twitter is @RichDolph11. on Twitter. And then if y'all want to follow me on IG, it's Richy_Hawk11.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah, if those of y'all listening want to give Richy a follow, he does talk a lot about Mavs as well. So if you're a basketball person, it's a vibe. But yeah, thank you for your time, Richy, and thank you for everyone who listened to this episode of Fourth Down Fiasco and our off-season segment, the FANBASE Fiasco. We appreciate y'all. Make sure that you follow us on social media as well. Whenever you're looking up Richy, you can look us up at _pod on Twitter and Fourth Down Fiasco on TikTok and Instagram. Thanks so much, y'all.
Well, I like school, and I like football, and I'm gonna keep doing them both because they make me